Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you joining us here for our first Hit It and Quit It webinar of the year. I am Keith Robinson, managing partner here at Focus, and I am delighted to get to welcome all of you into 2022. Can you believe it? It is 2022. I'm still having trouble getting my head wrapped around it. Today's going to be a lot of fun. We've got two things for you. One is, how do we get off to a really fast start? How do we join that elite 8% of people who actually create behavior change? And the end, please stick around. We're going to have just a little bit of a commercial for our new vlog, which will be launching next week. And these are short little ways for you to get information that we hope will help you be a better leader, a better manager, a better individual contributor, or frankly, maybe just a better human being. We don't know, but you'll get out of it what you would like. So what are we up to today? Let's take a look at where we're headed today. And I love this quote from Mark Twain. The secret of getting ahead is just getting started. And boy, isn't that true. Momentum is really something that can help us in so many big and different ways. But it's interesting, the statistics on, for example, New Year's resolutions are staggering. 32 days is the maximum length before 80% of us just sort of give up and go home, right? So that 8% have lasting change. And by the way, that's not just New Year's resolution change, that's setting your mind to something and trying to create some change. So how do we actually break through that? And that's really what we're up to today. Is it starts by getting started. So we're going to talk a little about what lasting change looks like and how do we actually create lasting change. We're going to give you the secret. And the secret is about not big change, but the secret is about layering small change. We're going to use some of the techniques from a book that I just love called Atomic Habits. I'll give you more about that later. We're going to talk about compounding the problem is the fact that some of the negative behaviors we have compound upon themselves and they make it even harder for us to actually get into that elite 8%. Recognizing that it takes a village to make change happen. And then, of course, we're going to give you the 4 laws of change as opposed to Isaac Asimov's The 4 Laws of Robotics, right, from iRobot. So stick around. I think you'll enjoy this and we'll have a little bit of fun with it. So let's sort of start with lasting change. And this actually is a quote. You're going the wrong way. And some of you might recognize that quote through the holidays, a famous holiday movie that I just absolutely love, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, where John Candy, and obviously they're going the wrong way on the highway. And that's something that we want to avoid, is going the wrong way. But when it comes to behavior change, what we want to do is go the right way. So how do we actually do that? Well, it's a shift of the mind. And the shift of the mind is moving from the what we're trying to achieve, the goal, to the who we actually are. So let me explain. I'm going to use, by the way, one of the most popular New Year's resolutions sort of as a way to get us to start thinking about going the wrong way and doing it a little differently. So typically when we think about the most classic New Year's resolution, right? Losing weight, decreasing body fat, whatever it is. I mean, so many of us think about, yeah, I'm going to go on a diet and I'm going to lose 20 pounds. And we always start our goal orientation with an outcome. I'm going to lose 20 pounds and that's success, right? Okay, nothing wrong with that necessarily. And then we create the diet and the exercise regimen, the process piece to kind of get us down the path. And then we recognize that if I'm down that path and I lose my 20 pounds, I'll be a healthier person, right? All of which is good, all of which keeps us out of the elite 8. Following this process is the recipe for negative momentum. So what's the right process? How do we go the right way? Well, it's interesting. It's just a very, very tiny shift in our thought process on how we actually create behavior change. And it starts with identity. Rather than identifying ourselves with the outcome, losing 20 pounds, we identify ourselves with being a healthy person. And then all of the decisions that we make get filtered through that identity. I'm a healthy person. Would a healthy person eat this chocolate cake? Probably not. Would a healthy person stay in bed rather than getting up and doing their exercise routine? Probably not. And I'm a healthy person, so I'm going to do that. Now, there's a lot more complexity to this, but just giving you the broad strokes is we start with an identity shift. I'm a writer, I'm a healthy person, I'm a high performer, I'm productive, whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. And if you've ever done any goal work with Focus Consulting Group, you'll know that we always say, write your goals as if it's already achieved. Why do we say that? Because that's the identity shift. And we want to be framing things through that filter of identity. Then we can create process. And oh, by the way, as the famous coach, football coach Bill Walsh would say, then the score or the outcome sort of takes care of itself. So rather than working from the goal of a percentage of weight loss or decreased fat, we say, I'm going to work from the identity and work my way down that way. That's actually how we move into the elite 8% that actually get behavior change to happen, is they trick their mind into thinking about who am I really? And who am I really will guide my behavior rather than the other way around. Okay, so that's one little piece. But where do habits come from? Our brains, by the way, are wired to habitual behaviors because they create shortcuts for us. They create ways for us to be more efficient. And our brains are all about preserving energy, right? So we create these shortcuts. Well, let's take a look at a different way to think about habits. And I started thinking about how do I frame this? And I thought about the 7 wonders of the world. Because the way we do behavior change and create new habits, better habits, is we want to use the 9th wonder of the world. So here are the 7 new wonders of the world, according to Wikipedia anyway. I didn't know there were 7 new ones. I'm an old guy. I stick in the old ones. So here are your 7 wonders of the world. The 8th wonder of the world for all of you in the investment industry is, ta-da, compound interest, right? So what's the 9th wonder of the world? When we talk about habit change, the 9th wonder of the world, like compound interest, is recognizing that our habits are compound themselves. One small habit creates another habit, creates another habit. Why? Because we're always looking for more efficient ways to use energy. That's how our brains work. So we want to change our habits one atomic habit at a time, one little change at a time. First, it starts with identity. I'm a healthy person. What would a healthy person do, right? That's the filter I make my decisions through. And then I start to think about how does a healthy person create these little habits that keep them healthy all the time, as opposed to the up and down and the up and down that we do. We do yo-yo dieting and things like that. Well, I'm not here, by the way, to help you lose 20 pounds. That's really not the objective of this. The objective is for us to unpack this idea of compound habits, the 9th wonder of the world, and go, I can get into that elite 8% if I start to do one thing at a time in a very small way. But we have to understand that compound habits don't just sort of happen. They do build on each other. And where does a habit actually come from? Let's take that apart and let's take that and look at it. So we think about stimulus and response. And so we're going to use a real simple example. You can all relate to this, is your cell phone. Your cell phone vibrates or rings and it gives you a cue. That's the first stimulus, right? The vibration of the cell phone. Something's happening here. Then from that, we get a craving. What's the craving we get? The craving is we want to know what made our cell phone go ding. Now, here is where it gets insidious. We're in the car, we're driving 50 miles an hour, and our cell phone goes off. And we know we shouldn't necessarily pick up the phone and look. Hey, truth be told, many of us do. And certainly sitting at a stoplight. And by the way, you can still get a ticket at a stoplight when you have your cell phone in your hand, just like you can when you're going 50 miles an hour. So good thing to know. So we have a cue and we get a craving and we respond to that craving, which is we pick up our cell phone. We take a peek, right? And we know peeks can be dangerous at times, but it's interesting. What is actually going on in our brain when we take the peek? Well, what's actually happening is we're getting a little reward. And you might say, well, what's the reward? Information, satisfaction of the craving response. What exactly is that reward? Well, it's a little bit more deeper than that. The reward is actually something called dopamine. And your brain gives you a little shot of dopamine, which is a satisfaction thing, right? So one of those things you go, oh, wow, okay, that felt pretty good. And what we recognize is we get these little shots of dopamine, we start to create habits. Cue, craving, response, reward, dopamine injection, habit. And so that's why it's hard not to look at the phone at 50 miles an hour. That's why you want to play just one more video game. It's maybe why you want to have just one more beer, right? We're getting little shots of dopamine. So actually what we need to do is to start thinking about how do we unwind that? How do we manage our dopamine supply so we don't create the wrong kind of habits? And so we don't create addictions, which are large shots of dopamine in our system. So let's take a look at this and let's say, well, all right, smart guy, what's an example of this in the office? So I'm going to take a very common office problem, right? Meeting efficiency. That's the problem we're trying to solve. Now, I recognize that many of us are working from home. The problem still applies to working from home. We get a cue, and the cue is I'm in a meeting and I'm kind of bored, or we're talking about a topic that frankly doesn't interest me all that much. You guys might be doing this right now, by the way. And so what do? Well, we get a craving, and the craving for many of us is productivity craving. So we say, yeah, I'm on camera or I'm in the meeting room and I'm just going to sneak a peek at my phone, see what's going on. I'll check my email, check my text messages, see what's happening in the markets. So the craving is to solve for a feeling that I'm not really being productive in this meeting. I'm not very engaged. We've got a stoppage in your momentum. The response is productivity. So the craving is, what could help me be more productive rather than sitting in this meeting or listening to Keith blather on for 20 minutes? So I pick up my phone and I feel more productive. That's my reward, is now my momentum isn't stopped individually because I've become a little bit more productive. Boom, dopamine shot. Ooh, well, that feels pretty good to be a little productive. And you put your phone back down and then you try and re-engage in the meeting. And by the way, it can take you a long time to get re-engaged into a meeting once you've had that little dopamine shot. Why? Because guess what? You'd like a little bit more of that dopamine. So our problem is dopamine more than it is anything else. And all we're doing is we're doing these cycles where we're just getting that injected, so to speak. We're getting these little hits of it, but we're doing it to create a negative habit. These little negative habits compound on themselves. And first we start checking our phone when we're sitting at the desk, and then we start checking our phone whenever we're bored. You get the idea. Because we still get these little hits of dopamine, for example, when we check our phone. Now, I'm not saying phones are necessarily evil. They do serve something, but they are one of the biggest inhibitors of productivity, for example, in team meetings. Okay, smart guys, so what do we do about it? We all know the problem. Now we have a little bit more data on the fact that this is how the problem shows up. Well, first thing, remember we start with identity. And the first thing I want to do is say, look, I want to change my identity to I am a team player. I work well with my team. I'm an engaged individual, productive in this meeting, right? So that would be the identity shift. That's sort of the thing that we're going to filter everything through. So you might ask yourself the question, well, would an engaged person pick up their phone in a meeting? No, they wouldn't. They'd be present in the moment at that moment in time. But how do we actually create some ways, some steps, these sort of 4 laws of lasting change? How do we actually apply them to help us, in this example, be more productive in a meeting, or to help us lose the 20 pounds, or whatever it is, the behavior it is we're trying to change? Well, we want to do it in small increments, because remember, there's compound habits like compound interest. So we start with little things and we start to accelerate those. So let me give you an example. First thing we want to do is want to make it very obvious to ourselves that the negative habit's the one I'm trying to change, or the new habit's the one I'm trying to build. So give ourselves cues, clues that we're trying to do that. For example, one of the things I do is I like visual clues. So I put visuals around my desk to things that I'm trying to actually change. Then I want to make the change attractive, make it positive. Remember, now what we're doing is we're managing our own dopamine supply in a different way. So we're going to make it attractive, and we're going to make it easy to do. The problem with, hey, I want to lose 20 pounds, or I want to stop people using cell phones in a meeting, is we make it really hard for that to happen, or we do it through a negative reaction, like shaming somebody in the meeting. Well, let's make it let's change that around. Let's make it easy for people to actually enjoy getting the reward, being satisfied by not bringing your phone into the meeting, for example, or being satisfied by being a healthy individual. That way we control the amount of dopamine and how the dopamine gets into our brains. So let me show you an example. So let's take the cell phone one. We'll sort of play this all the way through. So let's make it obvious. And if we were in the office, this is easy. We're going to put a basket by the door. And one of our sort of first ground rules is, hey, everybody, check your phone at the door. It's like the old West, right? Check your gun at the saloon door. Check your phone, drop it in the basket. It becomes an operating principle. We make it very obvious that that's what we're going to do. And we make it very attractive to do that. When somebody puts their phone in there, we thank them. We give them an appreciation. Hey, I appreciate you for playing along with us here. Similarly, in this environment, we may just say, and you'll hear us say this all the time, hey guys, put your cameras on. We'd like to see you. We do that, one, to make a better connection two-dimensionally, but to also try and help people make it easy for them to not necessarily get distracted. Why? Because they're on camera. So make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy. And here's the key, for example, to meetings and cell phones, make it rewarding. Isn't it great when an hour-long meeting that is scheduled for an hour gets done in 45 minutes? Well, that happens because we're all present and productive. So if we can do that, that's the shot of dopamine we're looking for, right? That ability to say, wow, the meeting got done early. This is great. So we make it satisfying simply by changing a very small habit, putting the phone in the basket. And then the other steps simply allow us to manage the behavior around that. So those are 4 lasting laws of behavior change. That's the way to move to that Elite 8. And we start with very small things, these very little atomic habits, the small things that can create big problems for us down the road. Here's a couple more tips that I want you to be thinking about. One is, it takes a village to create behavior change. And we use this term when we teach. We say, call your shot. Let people know this is what you're working on. This is the little habit I'm trying to change. And that way, when people catch you in the act of doing it right, they appreciate you for it. They say, yeah, thanks for putting that in the basket. That's what we're looking for. I appreciate you for doing that. I know that it may distract you from time to time, so we want to remove that distraction so we can actually get done early, or we could be more productive, or the meetings can be more fun. But call your shot. Let people know that's what you're up to. And then back to our Mark Twain comment. Don't think, do. So take action, move forward, identify who you are first. Focus on small incremental steps. And I'm going to give you a live example here in a moment. Small rewards provide more motivation. Smaller shots of dopamine are more effective than the big shots of dopamine in terms of creating these small habits that begin to build, compound on themselves. So appreciate successes. Make it easy through incrementalism. In other words, take the path of least resistance until you start to get used to the habit, and then build on that, right? Make it a little harder, make it a little harder, make it a little harder, go a little further, go a little faster. Stack your changes over time, because once we start to recognize that we don't really need our cell phone for 45 minutes in a meeting, you won't even need the basket anymore. Eventually, we'll recognize, productivity happens better, for example, when we don't have a cell phone in the meeting. Productivity happens better when we have agendas, and so on and so on. So we stack these little changes over time. Don't think about it, just do it. Often we don't have behavior change because we overanalyze. Don't think about it, just do it. If you're resisting getting up in the morning to go do your workout, ask yourself, well, what would a healthy person do? They would just go do the workout. And that's usually what stops us. I know I find for myself, when it's dark out and it's cold out, the last thing I want to do is get up and go work out. But if I just go on autopilot and I just make the first goal of getting to the gym, things start to snowball and I create a new habit from that. So those are some steps that'll help you do that. What I'd like you to think about now is creating a new habit and creating it with us. So we're going to start this vlog called 5 Minutes of Focus, and these will be 5 minutes or less. This will give you an opportunity to focus for 5 minutes every other week, remove all the distractions around and just push play and sit back and take in what we're talking to you about, what we're teaching you. You can access it on our website. You can access it through our YouTube channel. And we'll certainly put those out there for you as well for those of you on our distribution list. By the way, for you to get on our distribution list, please let Laura know and she'll add you to the list. Bullet 3. Bullet 1, if you want to listen to a recording of this, you can go to our website. All of the vlogs will be posted on our website as well. If you want more about what we're talking about with these atomic habits, I'd recommend the book by James Clear, Atomic Habits. It's got a little bit more detail than I was able to give you in 20 minutes. And lastly, thanks for joining us. And I hope you'll join us next month when all of the Focus Consulting Group partners will share their genius to help set you up for success in 2022. Thanks for joining. Happy New Year, and we'll see you next month.